Welcome to The Girl Herd,
where we talk Texas football.
and a bunch of takes you've probably already heard.
But not from us.
We back from the ATL, peeps. How we feeling? Are we still sad? We glad? We mixed?
I mean, we in the playoff at the 5 seed, so I was so unwell. I was really, really sad. The first time we played Georgia, I was not sad just because the product we put out in the field. Also, I understand that pressure builds up in an undefeated season. To me, seems extremely unrealistic in the new format. So I was like, all right, we have to get one. We have to get one. But this one, it was our first chance at the SEC title. We won't be able to do that again until a whole year goes by and everything goes our way again. As we know, the conference is just very difficult. So I wanted us to win, but then I wasn't sad anymore yesterday once I saw our new life in the playoff and just we get a home game. That's really exciting for us on the seniors. I think, we have good chances at DKR, and then we have Arizona State, and there's all these stories around Texas players who play there and all of these things. So I am not sad anymore, but I was very, very down bad, like Taylor Swift.
Rishi?
I know. I feel like I kept looking over at Devin. I said, how many times did I ask you, are you okay? After the game. And she was like, no. But yeah, I mean, I think we all wanted to win, of course. And I even said this on Sunday that I can't be too mad when the next game is at DKR. So another trip to Austin, another home game. It was sad thinking that Kentucky was our last home game, but then at the same time, yeah, would we have loved to win the SEC championship? Absolutely. Would I love to be ha ha ha, first time in the SEC, first time in the game, and we're a winner? 100%. But looking forward, I agree with you, Devin. I like this landscape for us. I like what's ahead for us. I love that the next stop is at DKR, and you could go into all of these things of analyzing of okay, now we essentially have a bye week and then we go, and that it's not several weeks off, which we had kind of last year as well. So there's I mean, I'm sure we can go through it, but yeah, I'm okay. I'm excited about how the playoff landscape now looks, and want to move forward. But now you want to talk, if we're going to go into the game and talk about it, yeah, I'm going to get mad again, but
yeah.
I think for me, the sadness comes from us not playing our best, right? If we lost and it was this even back and forth, whatever game everybody was playing to their best potential, all the things, I would have been okay, not as terrible. But the fact that we didn't on all cylinders come out firing, that's kind of the disappointing piece to me. But like you guys said, being the 5th seed, I feel like we do have some up and up chances for the rest of our season. But yeah, our first SEC championship, come on, friends.
I think the interesting thing is their fan base also knows that, Angie. Last game and this one, they know that they have not seen anywhere near our best. So outside of the incessant dog barking, the trash talking is honestly minimum to zero. In fact, a lot of them were still saying if we play again, you guys will win. And I just think that's very interesting for how strong of a brand and fan base they have to be giving us that level of respect after beating us twice in one season, to still be feeling that way. But I think it goes back to what you're saying. They feel that way because they also saw the game we saw, which was we still haven't put our best product on the field against them. And if we did, there's no reason why that game should have ever gone to overtime. And I think everybody knows that.
I think it's funny. We kind of saw the wave of the Georgia fans, right? There were still the Delulu crazy Georgia fans. What do they say in their little chant?
Obnoxious
Georgia fans. Yes. We saw those, but then you also see the ones that truly really understand and know the game and are okay, we really lucked out in this one. If you look at the numbers, if you look at the stats, no way we should have won that game.
Yeah, and I think it is funny, you guys both said it, that we heard both times we played them, we're gonna see y'all again. This isn't your last game. We're gonna see y'all again, or we know that y'all are gonna get in there. And there's been so many conversations around it where like Georgia tends to play their best game against us, or in certain times, and that we somehow, I don't know, get in our heads, don't play our best game for whatever reason, don't fire on all three, so like whatever it may be, and that who knows, like there was some jokes to be like Georgia could lose out before they ever get to you guys again. Like they're most likely to do that, versus potentially play us again just because of the way they play versus the way we've played all season, except against Georgia. Gosh darn it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's so many avenues we can go through about the game, but what like stood out to you guys the most?
The fact that they didn't let Bevo go, and the fact that we have to play in that stadium 2 more times. My dad was like, yeah, y'all lost because Bevo wasn't there. And I was like, honestly, that's part of our spirit. And our path to winning a natty this year is playing in that stadium 2 more times, which the upside of that is now our guys have seen that stadium, have gone through their game plan in that stadium. And I do like that because, like, as an athlete, when you're going into new arenas, it really can distract you sometimes. So that won't be a factor for them. And they've felt that turf and all of that. But yeah, I was kind of laughing because I'm still a little bit salt about Bevo being banned.
I thought about the fact that we potentially could play there 3 times. So we still have 2 more times to go, and that there is a positive side, even though us as fans were like, do we want to go to Atlanta that many times? There's a positive side that they've already played in that arena, kind of know what it feels like, and all of the above. I thought about that. The cannon wasn't there either.
Mhm.
All of I wonder how it would change from like SEC rules versus now CFP, but I'll be
Yeah,
curious.
and how many more years is the SEC championship going to be held there? Because if we do make it back, we need our Texas fans to travel. Like it was so quiet and so outnumbered as far as Georgia, right? It's a home game for them, which of course they're going to be there in numbers. But I'm like, can we at least, we don't have Bevo, we don't have a cannon, we don't have all things like our fans on, especially when we're on defense, we got to like come up with something and shake it up, right? We got to provide the noise element at least.
I thought, I said that, and I like in the stadium, like we were still loud when certain things happened, but I felt like definitely you could tell a wave of when something good on Georgia's side happened because it was so much louder in that stadium. And then of course, like the Falcons are red and black as well, so then the seats were red. So even if people weren't actually there, it looked like they were Georgia fans. But a lot of people that said they watched it on TV, they could still see a lot of orange all around. So it'll be interesting like how it actually waves out. And I feel like it all depends how the landscape looks next year too, and how people put the SEC championship versus all of the playoff games for travel.
Yeah. I mean, game wise, I feel like the thing that was sticking out was just that we moved the ball very easily on them. Like it just felt like we were going to win the game because like the ball, and I know Kirby had to be like, dang, like they are just moving this ball on us. And then it would be like a standstill at the 20 every single time, which is like the large conversation with the red zone. And I think like after the game and Sunday, as I was reflecting, one of the things that came up first for me was like, Arch was the one to put up the first points that we had against our very last game. So how is it that we're like not putting him in till overtime? I think before going into the game, we discussed it last week on the pod, like, oh, well, they're going to know that's the game plan. How will they utilize Arch this time? It'll be different. Like it'll need to be different. And I mean, everybody is saying the same things. Obviously, like his package can be red zone, but his package needs to be pass and run, which obviously makes sense because if you're doing one dimensional, they're just going to figure it out and tackle him. But I just like, I don't know how you don't make that move earlier in the game. And Sark has reflected and now said the same things, which I'm happy about because I'm like, yay, like he is on the same page that I'm thinking. And so hopefully we get to see that throughout the playoff run.
I think some other things that stood out for me after kind of like reflecting, like you said, and rewatching some things is our third quarter productions, like in the past couple of games. I'm like, what's going on when they go inside for halftime that they are not coming back out with the same juice and the same energy? That's something that we definitely need to pay attention to. And I don't know how you fix that. But then to making sure that our offense is like firing on the run game and pass, like you were saying, our pass game was great in the first half, especially we're moving the ball, but then our running game was kind of hindered. It wasn't as strong as it's been in the past too. So what would have happened if, all cylinders were firing in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, the yardage stats are ridiculous for our run game. You could look at that and know what happened and what the end was. But I mean, I'm also can question special teams a lot. Like there was some key plays there that you can watch even live or rewatching and being like, what happened there? Like, how did y'all not see the fake punt coming? Like, I feel like the whole world saw it. They're missing 2 field goals. That's huge. So that right there, right, is what, like, they ended up getting a field goal off of the fake punt, and then we missed 2 field goals. That's 9 points either way, however you want to look at it. So that was rough. We've been there was just a few bubbles, right? We can talk about offense, run game, especially where was the duo package that we wanted to see. Special teams made a few bobbles, and then there's that one play that I know we've all talked about of the interception, and then not getting that one block that Jade could have been down the field. But like, it's easy again to look at all this in hindsight, and we're only nitpicking it because we lost and wish we would have seen a win.
Think it's tough because it's like not just one thing. Like
yeah,
one thing. It's like, well, it's a one thing. We all have mental mistakes, but the fake punt was, first of all, insane. Like, you are literally evil Kirby pulling that on
Kirby mastermind.
whatever yard line, like evil Kirby, and like it worked. But I just like, those are the things that I know Sark will tighten for the playoff. It's a long season. Like, this has been a long season. The team is beat up and tired. I know Sark's probably mentally tired. And then those moments, seeing their backup punter go in, you've got to give that a second look and be like, hold up, wait a minute. But I'm sure when we stopped them, that was such an amazing stop on that. It's like a 4th and 3. They're backed up into their own yardage back there. And I kind of had the sigh of relief, like, all right, we're about to like really do something here. And then the next thing you know is like, oh, they really just did that and ran across to the first down. Like, I couldn't believe it. And then that drive was so heartbreaking because the rest of it was like, fumble by Georgia. We caused the fumble, and then they like got their fumble, and then like it happened again, and then they like got it again. I'm like, when will we get good luck? Maybe all of our bad luck happened in that game, and now we can win our playoff games.
Yeah, the football gods were not here for us that game as far as how the chips were falling, even all the penalties, right? I'm like, these refs, their little arm in throwing that flag has got to be tired because it was unreal. And I know we've had that earlier in the season where we were killed by penalties, but some of them, we discussed were quite questionable, but all things that we have to clear up and clean up. And sometimes, like you said, the ball just does not fall in our favor.
Yeah, they got half of the yardage on penalties that we did, which is just crazy, right, Jen?
Right, that's crazy. No, their offense was 50 yards of offense at halftime, and our penalties were 80 yards of penalties. So like, we basically gave them 80 extra yards in the first half. And you know what? Like, I'm never going to be one to complain about the refs. Like, we have Texas on our chest. We're playing the rest of our game. Like, we already know that. But the thing that I will never understand about college football, not just Texas, is holding and how inconsistent of a call it is, like not just within a game, but game to game. And I guess that's just how it goes. Some refs are more like, let the guys play and we're going to let some of this go, which is a style I prefer watching, or we're about to be calling this. And it's so funny because the gentleman we were sitting next to in the game were speaking about the holding calls, and they were like, it's inside the shoulders. Like, that's not holding. And people on Twitter are saying the same thing. So I was like, that's just very interesting.
I know. Do you think that they have a little huddle before the game and they're like, how are we about to call holding? How are we about to call PIs?
I'm
Like,
sure. I'm sure
you
that
know,
among the crew, they probably have to so that it stays consistent. But just, you'll go a whole game and never see a hold call and be like, that can't be. And it's like, did the refs forget about it, or did they like decide they weren't calling that? So I mean, the refs are always going to be a factor. It's quite unfortunate, but we have to play through.
I mean, pass interference is the same. Like some people you get away. It's kind of like I feel like baseball too. Like you're like you have to figure out what their ball and strike zone is and like on which pitchers and whatever. But yeah, I mean it's like what can I get away with and what are they about to call? Each game is different. But
One thing on like Quinn's accuracy, because that's been a big conversation after that game, and there's been lots of people posting videos and really talking about his accuracy. And what's crazy is I was not anticipating the secondary of Georgia to play the way that they did. And to me, on a lot of those throws, because drops has also been a very big discussion, the ones that I'm seeing clipped are not even drops. It is really, really good coverage. You saying PI made me think of that, Michelle, because they weren't doing any PIs. They were straight up covering. And like Quinn was dropping it in that bucket, but their DBs were right there on a lot of them as well. And I don't think that's something that we thought would happen going into the game and knowing where they're ranked with their secondary. So I think that
they,
fact.
they like pretty much took Gunnar Helm out of the game. And he is such a huge factor for our offense and such a game or playmaker that that definitely hurt us too. And props to them for what the scheme that they had in place. But I will say, like we had talked about before, some of Quinn's like deep balls and wanting him to be better at those. And I think we saw some of that this past weekend. But so like some of the guys that were sitting with us too, they kept saying, put the ball in the middle of field, put the ball in the middle of field and see what's going to happen because our guys can do so much after the catch, right? Like we can make you miss. And I think that is something for them to notate too as we continue to go through the playoffs is like, can we embed that more into our scheme?
yeah, I mean, I think I would like to believe they're looking at so many things of like, what do we prepare for and how do we go forward and fix from this game? And like you said, Devin, it's not just one thing. So there's a few things to fix here and move forward. And I agree. Like we even said during the game, though, we were happy that they were going for them. Like Quinn was throwing the ball, they were trying to throw those deep balls and see where they would go. And there was some great catches because you're right, they were covering us to the T, and then there was just some that we did not get what we wanted, and there were drop balls and different things that happened. But yeah, I know we can scheme. I want to see that duo QB package. I want to see Quinn run. I want to see Arch come in and do both. Like they did do a good fake play with Arch, and that was great too.
It was. And you know what? Someone mentioned this, and it may just have been, and honestly, we almost did. We took him to overtime. Somebody was saying, maybe Sark, this wasn't his plan. He thought, we don't need to release those packages and we can win the game without it. Should have won the game without it. That's what we all saw, right? So I do think that that aspect is interesting if that's what his mindset was. Like, I'm specifically saving this for our four or 3 game playoff run. Nobody has said this that I've seen, and we didn't talk about it on the podcast last week, but I also wonder the energy and the emotion that goes into a game like A&M after 13 years and then having to turn right back around for the SEC title game, what that meant for our dudes and like how much they were to 100%. Because you've got to imagine that they weren't 100% just based off of you have hyped yourself up for this game that the entire world has waited 13 years for it, went out and won it in amazing fashion, and then had to get right back to it. So, I mean, that's something that's been on my mind as well.
That's
Funny that
why
you bring that up. I was just thinking in my head of like, because our energy too was like, yes, we are so excited to be in this SEC championship, but win or lose, we're going to the playoff. So is that also some of the energy factor that they have in their mind as like they're like, what the day this isn't our last game, right? Like, I don't
And
know
I
if
mean, yeah,
that's
it's twofold. Like,
yeah.
and I was thinking about that earlier as well as we were talking about like next up and what's going on is, yeah, like this is we can kind of like learn from this game a little bit and still have like a little bit of fluff room, if you will, but like it still means so much to win this game and go to the SEC championship. But you're right, like we still have a landscape, and Devin, good point. Like whoever said like waiting on that QB package, saving some things, like maybe we don't need it here. To the like energy and emotional point, Sark did say this. And if you think about it, like even before the A&M game back to Arkansas, like this team was the team that also played, and like the last time we played Arkansas, what happened there? So going back to that, and then of course having senior night and your last night in DKR, Kentucky, and then going into the 13-year, hiatus game of A&M and rivalry, and then an SEC championship. So, I mean, these guys have been on an emotional road, and that for sure plays a role. So, I mean, awesome we get a bye and then get to go play back at DKR.
Sark is messy. I thought his little comment was funny. He was like, yeah, we played 5 SEC games in a row, 4 or 5, whatever he said. But that was definitely a slight to Georgia and whomever else, because the other SEC schools, they have a non-conference there at the end, which is honestly very smart to do considering the boiler room that we find ourselves in this past weekend and now. But yeah, I heard that as well, and it made me laugh.
Strategery around SEC football is something else, that's for sure. But did you guys see ESPN, I think, put out a little video today on TikTok of clips of the different teams finding out who they were going to be playing or if they were in the bracket, and the difference, which is funny that they showed it was Notre Dame, Texas, Boise State, Clemson, and the Notre Dame and Texas guys were like, golf clap, and the Boise State and Clemson people were like losing their mind. But also this story that's developing, the Clemson quarterback is from Austin. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see how he comes in. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove in his hometown. So interested to see how that goes.
There's lots of stories around us in Clemson, which I actually am very excited. Like we've never played them before. But yeah, I heard about the quarterback as well, played with Taft, and now he always wanted to play for Clemson. His parents went to A&M.
Yeah, I actually didn't know if they were gonna show our guys, because I was like, they've got to be pissed and B tired. And like Sark's interview was like, he was mad still from he was mad. I was like, oh, this is not good. But Clemson, we were texting about this. I'm like, of course Clemson is happy. They're little lucky stars, barely even got in this playoff. Like, I'm happy for them. But like, they are in a position that is vastly different from us. And so even Dabo's words, he was like, I don't know. He was like, kind of like, we're happy to be here. Texas is really good. Like, whenever he said that, I was like, oh, wow. Like, he was kind of assuming defeat already, or holding his cards back. I don't know. You could see that either way, but I was like, it kind of like made my ears perk up a little bit, like,
Talk about an orange out whenever we go to Austin. Like, it's going to be the battle of the oranges in this game.
Yeah, because their orange is just like orange. Because like Tennessee orange is a little bit more up there. Than you got regular orange, and you got burnt orange. So, this would be a good time for us to do a blackout if we were to ever do one.
It's the time. It will be at night, or no, it's during the day. What was I looking at? That's at night, but of course it's not.
It's not night, but it'll be a 3 p.m. game. And someone was tweeting at Del Conte saying, hey, like, are we having the regular like game day experience, or is it different because it's playoff? And he was just like, we're having the regular one with the wink, which like she mentioned drone show in her thing. So it will be dark with the time change by the time the fourth quarter is coming on. So I'm sure all those goodies will be included, which will be super exciting for everyone who attends that game, especially a lot of first-time people into DKR. I think it's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, I was thinking, because we kept thinking 4 p.m. and we were on Eastern time, but then it's like 3 p.m. But with the time change, yes, like we will get most of it. Will probably be a little dark, and it's cold and wintry. So one more game in DKR, play Clemson, first time ever. Oh, and another first SEC championship game that went into overtime.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I didn't either. So that's exciting. So
Look
yeah,
at us making history.
Well, that was another thing that I was thinking about though, is like overtime is not good for us in that game. Georgia
yeah.
had all the overtime experience. They had just had an overtime duel of the century. And I was
Yes.
like, this is not good for us. Like, they'll stay here all day. And I just hated the way overtime ended. Like, it was just all those cheers when Georgia got that rushing touchdown. You hate to see it on a rushing touchdown, too. That's got to be the worst way to lose.
Yeah. What's my one thing too with I feel like the defense and when Beck went down, I'm like, okay, well, we know he hasn't really played much, right? So how much are they going to be passing the ball versus running it? And I feel like our defense just kind of wasn't prepared for it, which how could they? But stopping their run after Beck went out was a little challenging and honestly a bummer that Beck went out because we definitely would have preferred him to stay in the game.
At that point in OT, we were just like, let's take it back to Austin. Let's go. Here we are.
I do like that our playoff position put us on the opposite side of the bracket. I think the country deserves, if we both win out, the country deserves part 3 of the saga. And I just didn't think either one of our teams deserved to be playing so quickly again. Like that would have been just way too much. And Michelle, like you mentioned at the top of the pod, I don't know if they will make it, and I like our chances. People were also talking about the fact that the 6 seed would have been better for us versus the 5 seed in terms of just like I guess giving respect to Clemson and ASU, which we do respect those teams, but I think I like our chances of heading back to the semi, which is where we were last year. And another really awesome tidbit: we are the only team returning to the playoff from last year. And I think that just says a lot about where we are as a program. It's really cool.
Yeah, agreed. I saw that
Is
little
this
tidbit too, and I love it. Like our guys worked to get here. And though we didn't just do the SEC championship how we wanted, I know that their eyes are now on getting to the Natty and playing the next game and then the next game and the next game and continuing. And that's exciting for us to see as well. It's interesting to hear 5 versus 6, but then I guess I can understand that, how that could have all played out. But yeah, and I love your comment about part 3 of the saga.
That's what it is. I
Third,
just, ooh,
third
I,
time's the charm?
yeah. Well, I will say, if there's no better situation for our team to be in. Like if they were pissed last time, the bad taste that they all have to have in their mouths right now, like I know they cannot wait until the 21st whenever we get back on that field. Like I know they're like, unlike last year, it's like we hit the postseason. We did our get our Big 12 flowers and win that, but then like the playoff was so stunted, I feel like. We got ourselves up for Jan 1. We go in against Washington. It's so frustrating in that game. And it's like, man, we have more left in the tank to show. This is not how we wanted to show up. And so I think losing to Georgia twice, having everyone slander us for that, I think will fire up these guys so much. I am really curious though what y'all think about all of the conversation around the playoffs since we have our first stage set, and they were asking all the coaches about it on ESPN, but the seating specifically and the auto bids, and people have lots of strong feelings about that. And it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like the committee is going to be pressured to change that. And a lot of the comments were specifically around how basketball, volleyball, really no other bracketed sport does it this way.
I mean, I do think that it is interesting and why do they do it this way, right? Like you said, nobody else does that. So why is it that way and why is it set up this way for football, right? Like what is the purpose behind it? And how did you guys really come up with this, honestly? That's my question. And I do think that they're gonna have to make some tweaks for sure to it in the upcoming years. Yes, there's going to be some learning curves, right? There's going to be some kinks that need to be worked out. So I'm really interested to see how the landscape continues to change and how it improves as far as the process goes as we continue to see this 12-team playoff system.
Yeah, I mean, I think even as they were announcing it, everyone was like, okay, there needs to be some changes. And I think a bunch of coaches have said it as well. And I mean, the fans, of course, have gone wild over what the end was in terms of what the 12 teams and who's playing what, and the automatic bye being one, especially where people are discussing about as well. So, I mean, I think, yeah, we're all learning this together. I don't know what their mindset was when they put it into this and why they didn't maybe mimic, sports that were already doing something of this sort, but it'll be interesting how this plays out.
We could speculate. I think it was all
Yeah.
about trying to create more parity, I think is the word, among the conferences. But like, especially all the SEC coaches, they're so pissed, and they should be, because at the end of the day, the conferences are simply not even. And then you threw out, we were texting about all the auto bid stuff a couple of weeks ago, because like literally myself was realizing this along with the whole country apparently, because we were just thinking Power Four were those 4 auto bids because that's what would make sense, which shout out to Boise State, they got in there. But you've got a team like Army who has 1 loss, and it goes into the seeding. That's what they were saying, the seeding on the other sports. It's determined off of your performance through the season, not some subjective ranking. So not only the auto bid thing and also the odd rankings, but also the way in which they rank these teams, and maybe when they start ranking them, needs to change next year too, because I don't know. I don't know why. I think it has to do a lot with our conference though, somehow. Like a lot of the rules that were made and then the pushback against it is also coming from our side, which I understand because there's a lot of talented teams. There's like 4 to 5 every year within the SEC alone that could be in that playoff. We're gonna find out.
like
Ohio State, Tennessee, first round out. We about to see.
I feel like too, which we've talked about throughout the season, is people continuously talking about strength of schedule, and why now all of a sudden if we play a team and they're ranked and we beat them, that doesn't discredit how they wind up being ranked by the end. Like at the
Why?
time we played
You
them,
know why.
they were ranked.
You know why. There's one very, very easy reason for that. We've never heard that before. Starts with
I'm
T.
like, we are not the one that ranks them, friends. It is you.
What'd you say? Starts with a T, Devin?
Starts with a T, ends with the S, because the ways in which that has never, ever in the whole existence of college football ever been a thing. You look at stats on ESPN and it says ranked wins for a school, ranked wins for a coach. And you know how they get that number? It's from when you played them, not from after the season. And this new stat of Texas now has no ranked wins of who's currently ranked. They can go shove it, because that's not how it works.
I know the number of times I've had that exact conversation. And then I'm like, all right, so y'all say Georgia's a good team. What's their best win? Are you about to say Texas? We're in this like circular situation where it's like, but Texas isn't good because we haven't played a like, which is it? Which is it? Which one?
Make it make sense.
Dead.
Yeah, I mean, people go off, say all this stuff, and you're right, Devin, it's because of us now. Like, starts with a T, ends with an S. Like, it's funny that we can say that now, and you want to water down, everyone wants to water down the SEC all of a sudden. I don't understand that either. I was showing Ange and I were waiting at the airport, and there was this tweet I saw that was about, because this was before the playoff and the 12 teams came out. And so it was against like, if SMU or Bama should get in and what should happen. And so someone was trying to say that us versus like, if you think SMU shouldn't get in with their like win-loss, then like you should also say this about Texas, and Texas shouldn't be in. And people were like, wait a minute, like I think it was SMU, maybe I don't, anyways, but it was like Texas strength of schedule is like 20 and this team's was 60. Like these are not the same. Like their best win and or win-loss are like wildly different than the team you're talking about.
People were also having conversations around like, okay, like this is how y'all chose who's in the playoff. Like I'm no longer scheduling very tough out of conference opponents. The problem with that is somebody so aptly pointed out that the difference between us and Ohio State and our 5 versus an 8 was the Michigan game. And that is why you want to continue to schedule very competitive games outside of your conference, because you never know how that might actually impact you in a positive way. I mean, look at our win versus Bama last year, for example.
Yeah, you never know how everything's gonna shake out and who those teams are that are gonna be on the bubble or whatever it is. So fill fill your team or your schedule with easy teams. It'll only help the rest of us.
Yeah, pad your stats. No big deal. And now, Devin, you were telling us today, I haven't been paying attention to all the bowl games, but Bama and Michigan playing against each other will be exciting.
I love when that happens. I mean, it happened to us last year, so maybe I don't love it. I don't know. That was bad, but I love it for Bama, Michigan for my own personal entertainment. It'll be nice to see them meet again. There were some other cool matchups I'm not remembering. Oh, Texas A&M is going to play USC, which I think will be cool since they have a common opponent in LSU from this season too.
Be a good one, that's for sure.
Yeah, who is LSU playing? I haven't seen that. I'll have to look.
I didn't see that one either. I glazed over it. It's a good question.
Remember, they're
Yeah.
coming to Texas though, I think, right?
Oh, are they playing in the Texas Bowl in Houston are they playing? No. I do know that BYU is playing Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, which I thought was interesting. Two Big 12 teams playing in a bowl game.
I need to look it up. I don't know why I thought that they were coming to Texas, but I need to look that up too. I can't remember.
Huh. It'll be exciting. I mean, look, like you want it to be like that. The 12 team kind of starts to take away from the bowl games. So you would rather it be that like teams that are actually playing in there, people want to pay attention to those games too. So
Yeah, look at the product of college football. I mean, there's 12 teams in a playoff. So we have all of these extra games happening and then still interesting bowl games. So hats off to them. Like you said, we don't know things till they happen. And it was just so funny that I think it all clicked in for everybody who was in charge of creating it. And then all the viewers, as like the seating was happening, we were like, huh, this kind of like doesn't make sense. So I'm sure they'll fix it.
So fun though too, like sitting in the airport because our flight was around noon, right? And so everybody, like all the Texas people, like you see them with their phones out, and everyone's like, "Did you see? Did you see? Are they talking about it? We're talking like, where are we going?" So it was really kind of cool to see because there's still so much excitement around it, even though we had just taken an L, but people are still so passionate. And like at the end of the day, we're always gonna have our horns up. Like, let's be real. I wish you could be us.
We have a lot to be excited about. I mean, for the only team to return, I think there's a lot of like what we could have been doing. There's a lot of what people want Quinn to be doing. But at the end of the day, Angie, horns are riding real high. Like we're so proud. And I love that we have that excitement and we're ready for the next. And I mean, y'all, we are like in the catbird seat for a while here. We just signed the #1 class. Like we stole a guy that was supposed to be going to Georgia. I mean, there's just not too much to complain about over here. I hope that we can get a natty or a few to show for it. And that's what we're here for.
And I mean, as we're recording today, the transfer portal opened. So excited to see what happens through that. Last year, we got a ton of people from the transfer portal that only helped stack our team. So hopefully, we kind of fill some gaps there outside of this #1 class that we just drafted. But there's some little holes we can still fill, which I'm sure Sark and like all the coaching staff is already on it times 1,000.
can you just imagine though, like having to sign a recruiting class, going into the SEC championship, now worried about the transfer portal, going into the playoff series, like hats off to all of our staff, our coaches, our recruiting, our like all of that, man, they're working it
I
to
mean,
make sure that we have this great of a season next year as well.
you bring up such a good point, Michelle. Someone, and I didn't go verify this, but someone had said today that there were 500 players in the portal. So to your point, like that is so much to pay attention to even make sure you're making the best portal moves. Also on the signees from our class, 20 of them are showing up basically end of this month or as soon as their seasons end, which we talked about heavily on the pod earlier in the year, like how that's so different now. Like when we were in school, it was like 5 or 6 players for early enrollment. And so it's just that much more of an edge that we'll have with these players. But yeah, I don't know how. I mean, when you start to factor in all of that, I know Sark is probably so tired and happy to have like a break and no game this coming weekend.
Yeah, I just envision in my head like this huge room of all these boards of like, the potential players they would want to get. And they're like, yes, no, highlight them. Are they in it? Are they not? Like, I just can't imagine how you even sleep these days when you're involved in recruiting because it never freaking ends.
And then making sure, like Quan pointed out, like the balance between the transfer portal versus like kids coming out of high school and like what that means for you as well. Like we got some great players off of the transfer portal, but we may be losing them like this next year, already. So making sure you balance all of that and for these kids as well, you want it to see it on both sides. So there's got to be so much that goes into that. And then I mean, yeah, plus like Devin, you were saying all of the just all of the things, like 500 people like paying attention to all of that, like that's a lot. And then
It's nearly impossible. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add about the idea that we did get portal players and the way in which they meshed into the culture. Cause like that is a very important element. You were going to say that? Like
I was
it's
like, I know there was something else that you said. Oh, the players coming in at the end of this month. Like what I love is exactly like what you are going on to is like the culture. Like they get to be with these guys that may leave in this senior class and mesh with them already.
yeah. I mean, what we've created is just so cool to see because you can't tell that those were portal players and that's not very easy to do, but that also is a testament to Sark and his staff because they're not just like, oh, let me look at the portal, 5-star, 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 adding them. It's about adding the right people who are going to be fitting into the culture. So excited to see what happens, excited for the playoffs. I just like, what are we going to do this weekend? There's no games to watch, y'all.
Yeah, that does feel weird.
Maybe watch
Please.
volleyball. Volleyball went to the Sweet 16. It's their 19th time in a row. So we'll be watching that.
We do love volleyball.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah,
wait.
looking forward to not traveling. Sleep.
Yeah. I was like, it was a struggle today. Like I almost halfway was like, y'all, I don't know about filming. Like I'm fine now, but I was just like, it's just been a grind.
That's funny.
Yes.
I've said that before. Like every Monday, I'm like, huh, how do I do this again?
The way I wasn't planning to get ready.
And we got like 2 weeks basically left of work weeks. So grinding for sure.
Gas tanks are on E, but here we are, full steam ahead.
We love our team. We can't wait. Yay, playoffs. Hopefully our team's gas tanks aren't on E.
Truly.
Oh my gosh.